One time, we were asked by a company to breach their security. And I met with the head of security off-site. And he said to me, Jenny, I know that you guys are the best, but you probably won't get in. He said to me, we've spent millions on perimeter security, and the only way that you really get in is if someone leaves the door open for you. So we took this to be a challenge, and we put the company under surveillance for a little while. And one of the elements of social engineering is you've got to fit the heist, the job, to the company. And what we'd observed is that this particular company had a culture that was very rule-driven, partly due to safety considerations. So if they were told to do something, people did it. So we banked that information, and then we looked a little bit further online. And one of the things that we saw was that the package for managers included on-site repairs to minor damages on cars. So we looked and we realised that we needed to get past security on the front gate first and get through that outer fence. So it was quite elaborate, really. Sometimes we don't need props. But on this particular occasion, we got a little van and a magnetic sign. And let's just say it said Jenny's Car Repair for now. And we pull up to security. The morning after, we prepped the site. Now, what did we do to prep the site? There were lots of pool cars parked up at the rear of a large car park on this site, quite near the railings, but obviously not used very much. And me and one of my crew, we started off by throwing little pebbles at the windscreen of one of these cars because we wanted it to crack. The pebbles didn't really work, so we went back with a pellet gun. And we shot out the windscreen. Now, the crack that we made was small, but it was enough. Then we turn up with Jenny's Auto Repairs, and we said to the security guard, look, we're here to do a windscreen repair on the car at the rear of the car park. And the guy basically knows that that's something that happens and waved us through. We got past security because they were used to this happening. This was a plausible explanation, and we looked plausible. So they let us through and we drove to the car at the rear of the car park. After making a bit of a show of checking the car, my colleague got back in the van, drove out to security and told them that we'd have to come back. It was a bigger job than we thought and we'd have to come back. But I wasn't in the van. I got out and I hid behind some bins on the site and I put a notice on the door that said, please do not close this door. Now, a couple of people came out, but about the fourth or fifth time, a guy came out and he saw the sign on the outside of the door and he propped the door open. Then when the shift ended, I went back in and we rinsed them. About 40 minutes, we got everything we needed. And then we left. And I just remember we had a mop-up meeting with the security guy, the head of security. And we showed him the film of how we'd done it. We explained it all. And we knew that the car was covered by the policy anyway. But he just had his head in his hands and he just kept saying, we spent 2 million quid.
Welcome to Season 9, and if you've been with me since the beginning, I'm grateful for that. However, most of you probably haven't been around that long. I may have missed the early episodes where I went through the basic cons and outlined the mechanics of how they worked. So Season 9 will include revisiting some of those cons, updating how they're working in today's world, and focusing more on why they work rather than how they work. Cons work for various reasons, but the one that joins them together is social engineering. That's the technique of getting people to do what you want them to do and voluntarily handing over their money. The woman you heard at the beginning of the episode, Jenny Radcliffe, calls herself a professional burglar. In the trade, they're called pen testers, penetration testers. They are professionals hired by companies to find weaknesses in their security and break into the company either physically, electronically, or both. Misdirection or impersonations are great tools, and we'll talk about those in a later episode. Scaring people with real or fake stories works, Playing on people's weaknesses, like greed, is another one. Professor Anne-Sophie Henschel told the World Knowledge Forum that the framing effect is important. How an idea is presented makes it more difficult for somebody to see an issue from a different point of view. Confidence plays a role. If the person presenting the idea has a high degree of confidence, people are more likely to believe them. That's one of the reasons scammers earn the title of confidence men. Intuition is also a problem. If something seems right, it's more likely to be accepted. We've all been taught to look both ways before crossing the street, but not necessarily to expect three-way intersections, especially if that third intersection is in our blind spot. There are many ways of creating blind spots. One of the newest versions is named the call merging scam. In this scenario, a scammer pretends to be a friend of the victim with important information to pass on. But just as they are about to disclose it, another call comes in, and the first friend says it's another friend calling with more information. The first friend suggests that the calls be merged into one so they can all talk. The second call comes quickly, and the issue has been framed as important, so the merge happens. Then both calls immediately disconnect. What has happened is that when the calls were merged, the second person was able to steal identifying information from the victim's phone, and that information allowed the scammers to access and clean out their bank account. These are targeted attacks, where the scammers already know information about the victim before the scam begins. This builds confidence in the victim and fits the logic they've experienced in life. They weren't looking for that third street. Here's another example. This one from Dr. Daniel Simons. He's a professor of psychology at the University of Illinois. He was speaking to a group assembled by the League of Women Voters and the Illinois Commission on Mis- and Disinformation.
A bank manager in France who withdrew 350,000 euros in cash from her accounts at her own bank, threw it in a duffel bag, took it to a cafe, and handed it over to someone she'd never met in a bathroom stall. Now, you might think, okay, this is just kind of a stupid criminal sort of thing. Stealing from your own bank is about the dumbest way to do it because, of course, you're going to get caught, and of course, banks have records. But she did it not because she was trying to steal the money. She was being conned. And in fact, I would argue that under the right circumstances, you probably would have done exactly the same thing that she did. All of us would have. She was conned by one of the greatest con artists that you've probably never heard of. He's a French-Israeli con artist named Gilbert Chikli.
Here's the framing and confidence that went into this con.
Well, the con starts with a call to the bank manager from the president of the entire banking system. And this is somebody that the bank manager maybe knew socially from a couple of large gatherings of the whole organization, but didn't really know him personally. So the president of the bank system calls up this bank manager and says, hey, we've been working with federal investigators who believe that our banking system is being used to support accounts that fund terrorism. They think that your bank in particular might have a couple of accounts that are tied to terrorists. I've been working with these investigators, and I want you to give them all of the help you can. So you're going to get a call from Paul in a few minutes, and he'll tell you more. So Paul gives her a call in a few minutes, and he knows a lot about her already. The first thing he tells her is, okay, this is a really important investigation. You cannot talk to people at your bank because we don't know which staff members might be involved in this, and we don't want to give any hints to the terrorists who are taking advantage of your banking system. So the first thing I need you to do is go get a new phone, a phone that doesn't have your number, so that we can kind of keep this distinct from anything that's happening at your work, and we'll make sure that you're protected. Over the next 3 days, he called her 42 times, talking to her about the details of this plan to conduct a sting operation, pulls her into the story, and eventually he asked her for details about the largest accounts at the bank. And of course, she provided that information, and he said, yes, well, one of those accounts seems to match the details we know about a terrorist funding account. We need your help to participate in this sting operation. withdraw the funds from that account in cash, put them in a duffel bag. And what I want you to do is go to this particular cafe and wear white so our other agents will recognize that you are who you're supposed to be. I'll be on the phone with you the whole time. When you get there, and I will tell you, once the agent has spotted you, I will tell you to go into a bathroom and lock yourself into a stall. And then another agent will come, knock at the door, and give you the password. Here's the password. The agent was then going to take the bags and go to the headquarters to mark the bills, and then would return them to you. But we don't want to return them at the same location because that would be kind of obvious. And if they're watching, we want to make sure that they're not seeing us leave and then come back. So this other agent will take the bills to the headquarters, and we want you at that point to go across town to this other restaurant. And when you get there, sit down and cross your legs, and that'll be a signal to the agent that you're there. And then the agent will be there in about 15 minutes and will give you instructions on what to do next. She does all of this, goes across town, sits down, crosses her legs, waits for 15 minutes, and Paul has stopped calling. Waits for 20 minutes, waits for 30 minutes, no call is coming, no agent is there. And it's at that point, even after 3 days of thinking about this, that she realizes that she's been taken.
Let's go a step further. How could anyone think they have a close relationship with a famous person they've never met? Someone like Brad Pitt. It happens all the time, and victims willingly send them money when it should be obvious they already have pretty fat wallets. Newsweek tells the story of how a romance scammer used AI-generated images of Brad Pitt to con a French woman out of $850,000, and how someone could fall for such a scam. AI Voice John reads from the Newsweek article.
According to BFM TV, the woman named Anne was first contacted via Facebook Messenger in 2023. Initially, the scammer posed as Pitt's mother, and then she received a text message from someone posing as the Fight Club actor. The victim, who was married to a millionaire, was drawn in over time by promises of love and eventual marriage, leading her to divorce her husband. The con artist posing as Pitt started asking for money, blaming his financial woes on his divorce from Angelina Jolie. He also said he was receiving cancer treatment, which he convinced Anne of by using AI-manipulated images of Pitt in a hospital bed. Experts explain that romance scams often target individuals who are lonely, emotionally vulnerable, or isolated. Ex-psychiatric nurse Jesson James told Newsweek, "Our brains work on emotion, not logic. Logic tells you this could be a scam. Emotion makes us fall for it anyway."
The framing of the issue was key in getting Anne to accept the premise presented to her. It wasn't a matter of her intelligence, but simply doing something that fit her false perception of what was reasonable. Perhaps the best example of scammers who can quickly create false scenarios and build confidence in a story are psychics. In our first show on psychics, we talked about cold readings and hot readings. Hot readings required that the psychic have some information about the client before the first meeting. You can see how that might work in some of the examples we've already talked about. Cold reading is exactly that. You meet a person and begin to construct a plausible scenario and circumstance that builds confidence in the victim. For information on that, I turned to Ian Rowland, known as the cold reading guy. These days, he teaches cold reading skills to businesses and others and has written 3 books on the topic.
So cold reading is where I don't need any information. So how would I go about it? Easy. I would pick one of the 7 classical themes that most cold readings most of the time are based on. And from that, I would say things that sound meaningful, but here's the key. In normal communication, when I'm talking to you or you're talking to me, I provide the meaning. My words, my meaning. With cold reading, I provide the words, but you provide the meaning. How does that happen? Because at the top of your head is a skull, inside the skull is a brain, and the brain is really good at various things, including pattern recognition. And what it will do is it will map my words onto your experience and find some significance and find some meaning and find some connection. as I say, when you take it out of context like this, you rip it out of context and people know that's what we're talking about. It's not, it doesn't have any effect. But in real life, when people enjoy a reading, I call them personal readings. I don't call them psychic readings. But when it's a personal reading and that process goes on, it feels absolutely wonderful.
The problem for psychics, of course, is they want repeat business. And if their predictions don't come true, the victims could become skeptical.
This is how it works in the general psychic industry. Suppose I make a prediction about something that's going to happen in your life. So long as I don't put a timestamp on it, I'm golden. If you come back to me in 3 months' time and say, I came for a reading, you made a prediction, it hasn't come true, I can simply say, don't worry, it will. And you come back to me 3 years later and say, that prediction hasn't come true. And I said, don't worry, it will. All right? I can always kick the can down the road and say, you just haven't waited long enough. And sooner or later, either you will die or I will die, at which point it ceases to be an issue, right? If I make a prediction and it comes true very quickly, hey, that's amazing. I went to see this psychic. She made a prediction. And just 3 days later, that thing happened. Wow. Which is great. On the other hand, if it's a long time before it comes true, that works for the psychic as well, because that just demonstrates that she could see further ahead into the future, doesn't it? This is why some people put future predictions into their readings, because there's really no way for the psychic to lose. The magic golden key is you just don't put a timestamp on it. If I say to you a fantastic financial opportunity in connection with someone whose name sounds like Chris or something like that is going to come your way next June the 3rd, that's risky. It's very likely to go wrong. But so long as I don't say when, so long as I just say this is indicated in your future, I'm golden and it can't really work against the psychic at all.
You have to admit it's almost a perfect con. You've done nothing illegal as long as you have a business license and pay your taxes. There's always a way out of what you say, and people keep coming back to give you money whether you're right or wrong. So it's fair to ask, if social engineering is so powerful, can a scammer be social engineered? Why, yes. Yes, they can. A couple in Castle Rock, Colorado had been convinced to buy $20,000 in gift cards, then give the redemption numbers to a woman who called herself Rebecca and claimed to be a federal agent. She sent them all over town buying the cards, but when the couple got to a Wells Fargo bank branch, a concerned teller notified police. A police officer talked to Rebecca on the phone and pretended to be the bank manager. 9 News said the scammer confessed and asked the police officer to help the couple.
Hello, this is the bank manager with Wells Fargo.
Over the next 10 minutes,
Actually, the couple has been scammed, so can you help them?
Rebecca told him everything.
Who is this that I'm speaking to?
The person who scammed them.
You scammed them?
Yes.
Why?
For the money. So they got the gift card and I got the money from it.
When you heard that,
I wanted to kill her. I couldn't believe that this happened. Am I still here?
Why did you do this to them?
Because they were good.
Because they were good?
Yeah.
what's unexpected
So just calm them down
is what they heard next.
and give them some water and explain them what happened to them, okay?
It seems the scammer is trying to get them help.
Now you have to explain them what happened to them because they are not aware of what happened.
That was the first video of its kind that I had ever seen.
Aaron West is a former California prosecutor who now leads a nonprofit called Operation Shamrock.
How does a person who has a heart and realizes that what she's just done is steal thousands of dollars from an elderly couple? And though she wasn't willing to give it back, what she was willing to do is try and stop the bleeding.
West says the call also reveals a bit about the infrastructure of scams.
I'm not doing it for myself. I work for someone.
What we know about the way these scams are happening is that they are being run by Chinese organized crime.
I'm working on salary. I'm not getting their whole money.
A lot of the people that are behind the phone are being forced to do that work for some reason, whether they've been trafficked in to do the work or tricked into doing that work.
West says this isn't just someone in a random room making phone calls. It's an operation full of people whose full-time job is to swindle.
The scammer may have had a change of heart, but her victims are still out $20,000, and their lives have changed radically. We can all be fooled, but the key is to protect yourself by slowing down, taking a step back, and asking yourself, does Brad Pitt really need $1 million of my money? Or could he just ask his good friend George Clooney for a loan? If you enjoy the show, please tell your friends and encourage them to listen. And give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. It's important to help people find the show. If you want to share some feedback with me, I have a new feature that allows you to send me a text. To protect your privacy, I can't text back, but I want to hear what you have to say, and you may get a shout out on the show. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Scams and Cons. Thanks for listening.